Queen Gorgo of Sparta stands before her men, recounting a tale of valor and sacrifice. A tale that intertwines the fates of Greece and Persia in a deadly struggle for dominance. She begins with the Battle of Marathon, a battle that would ignite a war spanning years and claiming countless lives. The story unfolds 10 years prior, where the mighty Persian Empire, led by King Darius I, sought to bring the Greek city-states to their knees. Darius, a man vexed by the very notion of Greek freedom, commanded his vast army to set sail across the Aegean Sea, their destination, the shores of Marathon. The Persian forces were immense, outnumbering the Greeks 3-1, and they believed their victory was assured. But the Greeks were not easily subdued. As the Persian fleet landed, weary from their long journey at sea, they were met with an unexpected assault. The Greek general, Themistocles, seized the moment, launching a surprise attack before the Persians could establish their camps or rest their tired bodies. Themistocles, a man of both strategy and bravery, led his troops into battle with a ferocity that caught the Persians off guard. Amidst the chaos of battle, Themistocles spotted King Darius across the battlefield. Without hesitation, he drew his bow, took aim, and loosed an arrow that found its mark, piercing Darius's heart. As the Persian king fell, his son, Xerxes, looked on helpless and enraged. With his father's dying breath, Xerxes was told to leave the Greeks to their ways, to avoid repeating his father's mistakes, for only the gods themselves could defeat the Greeks. But these words, meant as a warning, were twisted into a challenge by Artemisia, Darius's finest naval commander. Artemisia, a woman of unparalleled cunning and cruelty, urged Xerxes to seek vengeance. Under her influence, Xerxes embarked on a journey that would change him forever. He wandered the harsh desert until he reached a hermit's cave, where he immersed himself in an otherworldly liquid, emerging transformed. No longer just a man, but a god. Xerxes, now the self-proclaimed God King, returned to Persia with a single purpose: to wage war on Greece and crush those who had dared defy him. As Xerxes amassed his forces, Themistocles was preparing for the inevitable clash. He traveled to Sparta, seeking the aid of King Leonidas, known for his unparalleled skill in battle and his ironclad resolve. But Leonidas was away, consulting the oracle, and Queen Gorgo, left to hold court in his absence, was skeptical. The dream of a united Greece was not one shared by the Spartans, who valued their independence above all else. Despite this, Themistocles was determined to defend his homeland. He returned to Athens, where he convinced the council to grant him a fleet that would be Greece's only hope against the might of Persia's navy. Meanwhile, Xerxes led his vast army towards Thermopylae, intending to crush the Greeks both on land and at sea. The Persian navy, commanded by Artemisia, was poised to strike, but Themistocles had other plans. He gathered his forces, including his old friend Silas, who had infiltrated the Persian ranks and uncovered a dark secret about Artemisia. She was not born Persian. She was a Greek by birth. Her family had been brutally murdered by Greek soldiers, and she herself had been taken as a slave, enduring years of torment in the bowels of a Greek slave ship. This past, drenched in blood and pain, fueled her hatred for Greece and her unwavering loyalty to Persia. Rescued and adopted by King Darius, Artemisia had risen through the ranks, her thirst for vengeance making her one of Persia's deadliest weapons. The first naval engagement between the Greeks and Persians took place in the Aegean Sea. Themistocles led his fleet into battle with a bold strategy. Knowing the Persian ships were strong at the front but vulnerable in the middle, he ordered his men to ram the Persian vessels, creating openings for the Greek soldiers to charge aboard and slaughter their enemies. The battle was brutal, the sea stained red with blood, but the Greeks emerged victorious, their cunning and bravery outmatching the sheer numbers of the Persian fleet. The next day, Themistocles employed another tactic. He feigned a retreat, luring a portion of the Persian fleet into a narrow crevice where they became trapped from the cliffs above. The Greeks rained down death, decimating the Persian ships below. Impressed by Themistocles' prowess, Artemisia sent for him, offering him a chance to join her, to fight alongside the Persians as her second in command. She even attempted to seduce him, using every weapon in her arsenal to sway him to her side. But Themistocles, though tempted, refused. His loyalty to Greece was unshakable, and Artemisia, enraged by his rejection, vowed to destroy him. The next battle was even more harrowing. The Persians, under Artemisia's orders, poured tar into the sea and sent suicide bombers armed with flame bombs to swim to the Greek ships as the tar ignited. The sea became a hellish inferno. Ships from both sides exploded, and Themistocles was thrown into the water,
struggling to survive amidst the burning wreckage. He was saved
by Callisto, Scylla's son. But Scylla himself was mortally wounded as he lay dying. Themistocles could only watch, powerless to save his friend, believing Themistocles to be dead. Artemisia withdrew her forces, but the Greeks were left crippled, their navy in tatters. Desperate, Themistocles returned to Athens, where he learned of
the disaster at Thermopylae. King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans had been killed, and Xerxes was now marching towards Athens.
In a final act of defiance, Themistocles confronted Ephialtes, the deformed Spartan traitor who had betrayed his people for gold. Ephialtes, racked with guilt, revealed Xerxes' plan to attack Athens and welcome death. But Themistocles spared him, sending him instead to deliver a message to Xerxes. The Greek forces were gathering
at Salamis. With no other choice, Themistocles travelled once more to Sparta, seeking Queen Gorgo's aid, but she, too, was consumed by grief, mourning the loss of her husband and the Spartans who had fallen at Thermopylae. Before leaving, Themistocles returned Leonidas' sword, a symbol of Sparta's indomitable spirit, and urged
Gorgo to seek vengeance. As Xerxes' forces laid waste to Athens, Ephialtes delivered Themistocles' message. Upon hearing that his enemy still lived, Artemisia readied her fleet for the final confrontation, defying Xerxes' orders. The Battle of Salamis would be the decisive clash, the battle that would determine the fate of Greece. The Greek ships, though outnumbered, crashed into the Persian fleet with relentless fury. On the decks of these ships, men fought with a desperation born of knowing that their homeland, their very way of life, hung in the balance in the midst of the chaos. Themistocles and Artemisia found each other. Their duel was fierce, each strife filled with the hatred and respect they had for one another. The battle ended in a stalemate, both warriors wounded but unyielding. But the tide of the battle was about to turn. Queen Gorgo, who had been narrating this tale, led her Spartan army to join the fray, bringing with her the strength and resolve of the fallen Leonidas. The arrival of the Spartans, fierce and unyielding, tipped the scales that the Persians, despite their numbers, began to falter under the combined might of the Greek forces. In a final confrontation, Themistocles urged Artemisia to surrender, to end the bloodshed, but she, driven by her insatiable thirst for vengeance, refused. She attacked with a ferocity that only one fueled by hatred could muster. But Themistocles, embodying the courage and determination of his people, struck the fatal blow, piercing her stomach with his sword. As she lay dying, her life slipping away, she saw Xerxes, the man she had made a god, turn his back on her and retreat. Her last breath was one of bitter realization, knowing that in the end she had been nothing more than a pawn in a game far larger than herself. With Artemisia's death, the Persian forces began to crumble. Themistocles, Gorgo, and the remaining Greek warriors took a moment to silently acknowledge their alliance, their shared victory. Then, with a final rallying cry, they charged at the remaining Persians, determined to drive them from their shores and secure their freedom. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Xerxes had retreated, but he was not defeated. Themistocles knew that as long as the god king lived, Greece would never be safe. But for now, they had achieved a great victory, one that would be remembered for generations. And as the sun set on the battlefield, the Greeks stood tall, their spirits unbroken, ready to face whatever challenges the future might